Okay. Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, August 17th, 2023 Scarborough Board of Education meeting. Diane, can we call the, no, can we just do the Pledge of Allegiance? Would everybody mind joining me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
We're not taking attendance.
I think we're missing attendance. We'll do it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Diane, can we call attendance, please?
Sure. Mrs. Gammon.
Here.
Mr. Kelleher.
Here.
Miss Leong.
Here.
Mrs. Lindstrom.
Here.
Mr. Mayorino.
Here.
Ms. Tarpinian.
Here.
Mr. Peony Huff.
She'll be joining us soon.
Miss Leisure
She's been excused.
and Mr. Shumway.
He's been excused. Great, thank you. All right, agenda item 3.0 are adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments this evening?
No adjustment.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 4.0 is public comment. Is there anybody wishing to make public comment this evening? None. Seeing none and seeing none online, I will close that. Agenda item 4.5.0, excuse me, is the K through 8 unified school update. I just wanted to update everyone here and the public on last night's town council meeting. So the town council met in executive session for quite a lengthy time last night to discuss the path forward. So to back up just a step back, there was a land deal that the town council had authorized Tom Hall to sign with the developers of the Downs for the land for the school. Unfortunately, it was a time-bound land deal, so both parties had to sign by a very specific date. That date came and went without any signatures, so the land deal is now null and void. Last night at the town council meeting there was an agenda item to put the referendum reading to first reading, so a vote for first reading. In executive session, what the town council did was review all the options in front of them for the land, for the school. So that work is still ongoing. There is about 3 weeks between now and the next town council meeting where they are going to look for the best way forward for the land. They did go to first reading on the ballot language and it was approved 6-1 by the council. I would, which was great news. It did get passed. There is a lot of work though to be done between now and then. So really what we are tasked with and moving forward, what we need to do is really educate the community more so on the need for the school, why this is important, why this land is the right place, why this unified school is the right choice, and why the K through 8 strategic plan is the right plan for the whole district. So not just our students, not just our staff, but really our entire community. So that is where we are right now. The next few weeks will be very busy as town council really kind of works to wrap its arms around what are the next steps and how do we continue? As we all know, there's really just not a lot of land in Scarborough. There's not a lot of choice for us. So that is where we're at. Hopefully at the next meeting, the next town council meeting, which would be the second reading of the ballot language, would be September 6th. No, I think the view.
I don't think it's good. I think it's the technology.
Oh.
Is seeing.
Okay. Should I exit out of because you're on?
I'm not on. Zoom.
No, I mean, yeah, I'll just come off. Yeah, I can come off, no worries. Okay. Perfect, there we are. Now everybody can see. Yeah, not just Shannon Lindstrom in bold letters across the screen. All right, so are there any questions for me about the update?
Just have a quick question
Yeah.
on, so if for it to pass at second reading, does the deal need to be agreed upon with the Downs or whatever?
Crossroads, yeah, that's a great question. My personal perception from what I heard last night is, I don't know that the second reading would pass if there's not a land deal in place. There are counselors that really want this hammered out prior to
Yeah. That makes sense.
going to
Yeah.
referendum. So
Makes
yes,
sense.
I don't believe it would pass if not.
Yeah, I think the practical piece of it is if there isn't a land deal in place and it were to go to referendum, it would be I think it would be, and I think it makes sense. That would be a practical challenge for it to
Mm.
pass if there wasn't a land deal in place for sure.
I say, just thinking that through a little
Yeah.
further, I'm
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, we have to know a dollar amount.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and
we don't have a deal,
were-
you don't have a dollar, so.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
think that's a big piece of understanding the whole project, right? 'Cause that dollar figure, the 160 million does include the cost of the Downs land as we knew it with the land deal that has expired. Yeah. Good question. Are there any other questions? All right.
When is the next time we are all meeting with town council?
We have not set another date yet with them. It was supposed to be last night, as you know, we were supposed to have a joint workshop with them ahead of their vote. That was assuming, of course, the land deal would be signed. So when that didn't happen, our workshop was canceled, but we do have one. We will reschedule it. It just, I don't have that date yet from John. Any other questions? All right. Agenda item 6.0 is a superintendent's report. So I'll turn this over to Jeff.
Yeah, it's been a busy summer. So, I mean, the campus, I think, is a little quieter, obviously, than normal, but there's been a whole lot of things going on. I'm finishing up a letter just summarizing things that have been going on around campus over the summertime, to go out to the whole community and to staff, probably tomorrow. As far as kids, we had our summer reading academy and kinder camp at the elementary level. Middle school connections with sixth graders. We have high schoolers working through credit recovery and pathways. A lot of staff development and curriculum work. We've had over 30 sessions, many hosted and staff working with staff. So I mean, there's just a lot of collaboration that goes on over the summer in terms of professional development, in terms of building skills and developing curriculum at all phase levels. Fall athletics are already underway. So football, field hockey, soccer, volleyball, sports, cross country, Mike was saying we've got 400 athletes this fall, which I think is a new record. So that's pretty cool. Clubs and organizations, we've had Music Boosters had a booth set up at Summerfest. So we're starting to, it's like fall already somehow, right? Or it certainly feels that way. I'm trying to like say, no, still summer. But anyway, so that everything's heating up. We had, just go to the slide here that I presented to. We last week had our Leadership Institute, our Leadership Council 2 days, and just really kind of setting goals for the year, getting ready for opening days, opening staff days. Those were a really good 2 days. We're excited to have Principal Kafele, who's a nationally renowned educational consultant and speaker, a former turnaround principal in New Jersey, winners of multiple national awards. He's just really inspiring, and he's been working. We've had the opportunity as a leadership council to meet with him a couple of times over the course of the last year to learn from him around building this an equity mindset as educators, and then also culturally responsive teaching. So as as our classrooms and community grows, and both in enrollment but also diversity, he's got a lot of really good ways to explain and set the table and provide us that just his education and inspiration for building a more inclusive community in our schools. So he's going to be, he was with us actually, inclusive of school-based teams and our office staff this past Tuesday on the 15th, and is going to be offering a keynote at our second day of the all district opening on August 29th. So we've got our opening staff development days, which we're busy getting ready for on the 28th and 29th, and appointment days and everything to welcome everybody back. So we're excited.
Good. Thank you, Jeff. Is there any questions? Good job. All right. Very good. So agenda item 7.0 is the chair's report. I have one thing I wanted to add in my chair's report to what I was talking about with the school building. And it very much relates to your question, Carolyn, that if, what is the path forward if there is no land? And the reality is, if there is not a land deal on the table, that I mentioned, I'm not confident that the second reading will pass, which means we would, at a bare minimum, we would be delayed in the school process. And a delay, when we have talked this through, a delay would equate to about a year delay. So unfortunately for really the community as a whole, because a delay in the project does not equate to kids not coming to Scarborough. So we still have this very large group of kids that are moving and being born and will live in Scarborough in 2027 when the school was set to open. So going forward, it's really incumbent upon those of us in the community that believe in this project and support this project to really share our thoughts and our feelings with town council. So there's multiple ways to do that. You can email town council and share your opinions and your thoughts of support, or you can provide public comment at their next board meeting. I'm sorry, their next council meeting, which is the 6th of September. So, any questions on that? Okay. Agenda item 7.1 is a 2023 proposed MSBA resolution. So as a reminder, this is an annual delegate assembly that happens every year with the Maine School Board Association, and it brings together, the assembly brings together representatives from all over the state of Maine that serve as delegates and represent their community. Freyla has volunteered previously to be our delegate. So our goal tonight is to read through the changes, the proposed revisions, and then the new proposed resolutions, and provide feedback to Freyla that she will then take with her. And it is her duty at the assembly to speak on our behalf and to vote in a way that she believes represents what our thoughts are tonight. So what you see in front of you, we'll just go through them briefly. There's the packet of resolutions, which Cheryl, I'll send to you for the website. There are some deletions and removals. I didn't include that in there because it's deleting old. And some of these revisions actually combine multiple resolutions into one. So you'll see that if you look through the materials that you had ahead of time, you'll see that. But the first one is a career and technical education opportunities. This reads, with a growing demand that public schools better prepare students for work as well as college, the Maine School Board Association supports expanded opportunities for students to participate in career and technical education, CTE classes. Early exposure to hands-on skills helps students discover interests and visualize career paths. CTE also makes traditional learning more relevant and keeps students engaged. We support efforts to make CTE classes more available, understanding it will take local coordination efforts and greater flexibility in scheduling to make it work. It also is critical that our CTE programs form alliances with local businesses to support this effort, and that the state provides adequate funding to support CTE services and programs to include transportation and equipment. So that is the updated, the revised resolution, and it does if this was accepted, if this resolution as written was accepted, it would delete 3 previous resolutions and kind of combine them into one. So on the surface, so we'll open it up first for discussion on this one. Is there any discussion or any thoughts about this particular resolution? Didn't know if there's anything from Jeff or Brian, your work with the vocational group. Is there anything that you could think that would be need to be addressed here?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What is the effect of these resolutions? These are sort of like guiding principles for the state that we're all agreeing on as a collective. If I
Mhm.
understand correctly, I
Mhm.
just want to make sure we know what we're doing. And so what we're having input on is sort of what are those guiding principles or sort of best practices, you might call it in a different field, for school boards
Yes.
and schools. Like, I'm not
Yes.
mistaken in that.
No.
That's what this is.
Yes.
So what we're doing is trying to set what we think is the best practice forward.
Right, and these guiding principles, thank you, that's thank you for saying that, Freyla. These guiding principles guide the MSBA when they advocate on school board's behalf. So when they go and speak to our local and elected officials, what they do is they use these guidelines to guide that work, right? So this would guide their conversations, guide how they advocate for schools in Maine. Yeah.
I was just gonna add on to this, that when I had read through the document in advance, I was glad to see that this is one of the first things that's on there. Just as a previous CTE teacher, but also now sitting on being the liaison for that particular group. You just see how passionate these particular teachers are, but also the talent that they bring to the table, and they really just want to share that with the students. But it seems like the demand is growing in certain areas more so. I know down in Biddeford, they're actually expanding, adding 2 different programs, adding a whole addition onto their to their school over there for that very, very purpose. So I think it's great to see this. And I particularly liked how it said kind of right dead in the middle, it says CTE also makes traditional learning more relevant. I literally had a conversation today with a student I had about 3 years ago. He called me to tell me he's graduating early because he took my classes, and basically he didn't realize how much it was going to help him. And that was just a general business class. So I think there's a ton of value, and I'd love to see this statewide, but I think really in Scarborough, it would be huge just to continue to push the idea of CTE and show kids that there is opportunity, that doesn't always have to be those traditional white collar jobs, that blue collar jobs pay really well too sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, it's sorry, I didn't mean to jump in on you. This program is expanding and expanding. You know, if you think back to what it was when it first started, in my mind, I seem to remember it being auto shop, right? And it's so much more than auto shop, right? There are there's electrician, there is criminology, there is beautician school. There is so many opportunities for students that is not the traditional, to your point, four-year school. And it, to me, what this does is it almost, it goes that one step further to removing any sort of stigma that's still left around CTE. And that's what, in my mind, is the important thing.
Yeah, and I would just add that it also, and this is bearing out with graduates, whether it's Paz or Westbrook, it's not, this isn't just, these are also kids who will go on to higher education. But they're coming out of high school with certifications and job ready and skills where they can get right into the workforce. So that, and it's also, I think it's important for school boards because it is a shared expense. So it's multiple districts that are, you know, also financially supporting and kicking in dollars for, you know, students who are attending CTE programs. I mean, the challenge I think has been, as far as like expansion too, is it's just, you know, junior and senior year, you know, Westbrook and in Paz. So how do we get, do we expand and then include and start with freshman, sophomore and have a sophomore program, that kind of thing. So there's been a lot of talk about that. Is there also an additional session that's in the like late afternoons, evenings? We've talked about having a third session because one of the challenges for CTE programs is that it's a hybrid approach. So they're at a sending school in the morning and then they're, either going in the afternoon or vice versa, either attending in the morning and then going in the afternoon. So there's that, all of those transitions can make it a challenge, but it's definitely expanding and the need is, is there for sure.
Yes, go ahead.
And I think there's really community support for it. I know that I was approached by a couple of business members of the community at a function I was at. And what they were really pushing is that like there's money out there for tools, there's money for startup costs. And like I was able to put them in contact with the one of the individuals at the high school that mentors people and helps them get like apprenticeships and job training and stuff like that. And and so I think there is a lot of community support for this as well. And we know that there's a huge demand right now in the market for people who have these hard skills right out of high school. And it's not, college is not for everybody. And we need to be able to serve everybody, not just people who fit one mold.
I like the I like what you're saying about maybe expanding this. There are talks to expand this to ninth and 10th graders. And I wonder how we could maybe strengthen this a little bit to include some of that advocacy.
So I was, as Jeff was saying, that when I had left from teaching down at the Biddeford Center of Technology, they had just started incorporating more of this. Freshmen, it was hard just because they don't really know their career path. So to get them into things is a little harder. But what they did start to do is during that freshman year, they would walk them through our programs and they would spend like half a day once just to get a little bit of exposure and they could choose their top 3 programs that they wanted. So it would give them a little bit of a taste to let them know that we exist. So when they move on and they become sophomores and juniors and seniors, they know what's there. And there were some programs, at least down there, that were open to sophomores, but most, it was just juniors and seniors.
Yeah, so maybe that's something to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In the early exposure, but I sort of like emphasizing that.
yeah. Is there any other comments or discussion for Freyla?
Don't worry, I'm taking notes.
Thank you. All right. The second revision is titled Staff Relationships. The Maine School Boards Association urges school boards to enact and publicize procedures that give voice to district employees. While boards have the final say in matters of policy, staff impacted by policy should have the means to provide input through a robust meet and consult process. School Board Policy Committee members, through administrators who attend policy committee meetings, should seek input from affected staff. This particular resolution combines or replaces an old staff relationship resolution. this goes a little bit more in depth, I would say, adds a little bit more meat to the resolution, excuse me. Really expanding upon the staff, how that they should be able to provide input to the board. I'm gonna look over to the two of you first. What are your thoughts on this? I just wonder, because I feel like we have a pretty robust meet and consult process outlined pretty extensively in our contracts. And so I guess I'm wondering what the onus of it, because we all look to MSBA to help us as we draft things and we write policies and we write contracts and whatnot. So I presume others in the state do. So I'm curious as to why we are expanding upon this now. Do you have any insight? Yeah, not.
Do you find that teachers avail themselves of the myriad of ways that we have for them to reach out?
Well, we
Mhm.
have input right now for a meet and consult, so we have people
Okay.
utilizing the process, which so that would speaks to it. I think we live up to this maybe, and maybe we're ahead of the curve sometimes in this instance, perhaps, not like, I don't know, but like maybe we're doing this and that's what other districts should be doing and making it statewide. I don't think it means that like we're trying to catch up to everything. Sometimes we are doing the right thing, and I think we're just recognizing that in this. I know we've had a desire to have more staff input in policy specifically, and I think we'll have a chance to think about that. That came up between our policy meeting.
Yeah.
But I mean, we have a meeting consult on the, not on the, like, not on the schedule, but we have it on the book, so to speak. So it's a process that we practice here.
Yeah, and we do, when we have policies that impact a specific department, we do have it's not a procedure that's in the books, but we do have a practice of inviting staff members to our policy meetings. So for example, when we've looked at policies about immunizations, we've brought the nursing staff in. When we've looked at policies, we're going to look at one tonight about student fees. So our athletic director came in and met with us and spoke with us. So we, to Freyla's point, we are already following this, and maybe it's naive of me to assume others do as well. This one, I guess, just kind of surprised me. I wasn't quite sure of what the.
I
what the
think this
onus
one
was.
just cleans up the language that was there prior. It doesn't really change a whole lot.
Yeah,
It just makes it sound better.
better.
Yeah, and a little bit more inclusive of the staff and
Yeah.
faculty.
All right, so we feel good here. All right, the next one is professional development. The Maine School Board Association urges local school boards to ensure the continuing professional development needs of the education professionals with whom they share the responsibility for school improvement are met. MSBA believes in better preparation for instructional staff and encourages professional development that will exemplify the highest ideals in education through development of in-service programs related to the specific needs of their school system, B, encouragement of full utilization of such programs, and C, compensation for additional credits if such additional training is in the area of competency of the individual staff or is otherwise deemed appropriate by the school board. School boards should work to ensure maximum opportunities are provided for all staff so that year by year, their effectiveness increases as educators and as leaders in the community. Attainment of the Maine system of learning results requires sustained devotion of time, effort, and financial resources to the continuing education of the instructional staff. And so this would delete two previous resolutions. So is there any discussion here?
Yeah, we want to train our staff.
Yeah, I think it's like this weird one because, yes, we absolutely, like, this should be a priority, right? But, where I veer off a little bit, and this is probably me reading a little too much in, really, we think about our role is the 30,000 foot view, set the direction, the vision, the tone. the boots on the ground is our superintendent and our assistant superintendent. So we're not directing professional development needs. Jeff and Diane are directing professional development needs.
I'd fight with you a little bit only because of the way our contract negotiations work in regards to our PD here. So professional development is, there are stipulations within our contracts about how PD and when PD happens. There's pushback from the staff because I've heard from Monique very little. I can imagine most people heard more about her wanting, more time and more dates. There's a
Mm.
tension between staff wanting to learn in order to deploy the highest, level to continue their own development so that they can pass it on. And then the tension with keeping kids in school. And that balance, I've heard that throughout the budget process. I heard it throughout the last year. But so I think it's important that we make it a goal by funding it, by
Mhm.
supporting it and make sure there's time for it, but not directing what it is.
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
not our job.
And to your point, Frayla, I think we've also seen that play itself out in years where the leadership team has made recommendations about a school calendar that would support greater professional development, that would be more in line with communities nearby. And again, we have heard that message that, it's about the time that our students are in school. And so, there's definitely a tension between
Mm.
making sure that we're maximizing time for students while we're also making sure that we have the most highly skilled employees possible.
Right. My only other question, and I know that we have this in play. I don't know if this is across the state of Maine, the compensation for additional credits. And not that this is a mandate and not that this is the way everybody has to do it. I just, because that's tax money, that feels a little. I don't know if that can be. The wording can be.
Well, I had the opportunity to attend one of the development days and I learned something, which is that I could have gotten educational credits if I had the right certification for attending. So I think we do
Yeah.
support staff by
Yes,
paying them
yes.
and making sure they get credit for being there. So I don't think it's additional tax money that we're thinking about, but I
Yeah.
think that we value people. And the
Yeah.
way that you value people is by respecting their time, by compensating them fairly, and by ensuring they have opportunities to grow. And that's why people are, I think, happy here and we're attracting the staff that we're attracting.
Yeah, I would agree with that, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think some of this is also aligning your professional development to meet the growth and the development of your staff, but then also make sure it's aligned with district goals. And it's not these one-offs or like this, and then teachers use district money just to fulfill the one thing that they're interested in, but it's not necessarily related or aligned with, what other staff is doing. So there's a little bit of that in here too, which I think makes sense. And it's certainly how we want to try and use our own resources for PD.
Mhm.
And I think the key word here is if such additional training in the area of competency for them is required. So,
Mhm.
you're
Yeah.
investing as needed.
Yeah,
Right.
right. Right. All right, the next revision is teacher preparation programs. The Maine School Boards Association believes there should be ongoing review of teacher preparation programs through collaboration with colleges and universities, local school boards, the Department of Education, and MSBA, along with other groups and individuals as appropriate. The goal of the collaboration is to determine if teachers are being prepared appropriately with best practices to help all students achieve the standards within the Maine system of learning results, improving the quality of teaching and certification procedures. Additionally, MSBA recommends that approved teacher preparation programs include best practice training to help teachers assist in the identification of students who may have behavioral health, substance use or mental health, or academic issues. And then That's it. So that would take the place of, or would delete two old resolutions as well. All right, is there any discussion on this?
So for this one, and I could just be really nitpicky about it, but I don't feel as though it includes it. So basically it specifies mental health and behavioral, but it's not encompassing like physical limitations to a space either. I think like some of this academic needs kind of cover like your OTs, your PTs, your SLPs. But then when you have like a physical situation, maybe you need wheelchair access and how to accommodate that in a classroom. I think academically, there might not be a need,
Right.
just the physical need. Something that encompasses some physical space for these students also.
My sense is that it was written in the way that you see it here because there was such a gap in the skill set with education professionals in meeting behavioral needs because we've seen such an upsurgence of that with students. And so I don't believe that it was because we don't think we want people to have skills in those areas, but it was really zoning in on, behavioral health and then academics in terms of, as we think about multi-tiered systems of supports and really wanting to provide intervention at the, lowest level possible.
What's interesting though, is that the 4.8 resolution that would be deleted, which is teacher preparation program, when it goes through the list of people or collaborative groups you should work with, one of them is main administrators of services for children with disabilities. So back to what you're saying,
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Jenna.
I think you could put that in.
I think we should insert, I think behavioral health, both sides of mental health, I think is something that is new to think about in a school
Mhm.
setting. And I think there's a huge recognition and emerging ideas about how to treat that. But I think you're right. I think we also need to support students with, and academic issues seems really broad, but like, I think calling out, children who have special needs and making sure teachers are prepared to deal with them in the classroom, whether that's recognizing a child who's neurodivergent and needs a motor break in the middle of class, or creating a space for children who can need to take a break because they're overstimulated, knowing that children need the STEM and not, calling that a behavioral issue because they're fidgeting. Those are really important skills that are not, that should be part of every school, but may not have always been something that teachers have been trained on. 20 years ago, I don't think teachers were trained on that. And we have teachers who have been in our schools for that long to make sure that they're recognizing that. So I think there's a way to work, and I think it should be worked.
And I think the, this is a piece that I'm really super interested about. So I think that collaboration between schools and colleges and universities is so vitally important. Actually, just today, I was meeting with a group that I participate in. I happen to chair the College of Education Advisory Council for USM. And so we were developing our agenda for our next meeting. And it's a great group to be part of because we have about 25 education professionals from our region in all different roles, some in central office roles, some building leaders, teachers, coaches, instructional coaches. We meet multiple times a year with the leaders at USM for the different schools of education to talk about what the needs that we're seeing in our schools are, and they have made real changes in developing their programs, which is just the best thing ever, right? Because we have to be communicating with each other. And I don't know if anyone has seen the piece, even in regards to the apprenticeship program that has been established with Southern Maine Community College and the University of Southern Maine. that work is, providing an alternate pathway to grow educators to try to fill in some of that gap. And so it's just really exciting that our higher education partners are really interested in helping us to grow educators in the field.
All right. Is there any other discussion here? Any other questions? All right, thank you. All right. The last revision is school district collaboration. Speaking of collaboration, this is previously called school choice. The Maine School Boards Association applauds the efforts of many local school boards to establish programs that allow students options to learn in a manner that is most productive to them. Therefore, MSBA encourages and supports continuation of efforts to provide multiple pathways via inter-district choices for voluntary efforts among public school units to establish and maintain regional programs for the benefit of their students. MSBA opposes mandated inter-district choice. First, is there any discussion from anybody? This feels like a lot of words to me. And so that's where I am.
What is mandated interdistrict?
Well, that's what I was,
District
that's my
choice.
second question, yes. Yes.
Vouchers. But like the idea of voucher programs.
Gotcha. Okay. I don't even know, I'm not sure that I read this and understand what they're getting at. So if anybody else has any different thoughts, I just am kind of looking here to see if you could help us, maybe, what are we trying to get at here?
Is this charter school, mostly charter school thing?
The way I read it is that it looks at how do schools work collectively with one another to build and establish programs rather than competing with each other and saying, I'm going to take your kids and bring them over to my charter school. Right. Or, as we have seen under previous state leadership at, sometime in our state where, there was a belief that there should be a voucher program that exists and that every family should get to decide what school district they want their child to attend. So I think this is more about how do we work collectively to establish programming for students so that we're not competitive, but we're saying, here's a need. I think it's kind of an offshoot to a much larger extent than the vocational programming, right? It kind of builds off of that concept.
Right, and I think as you get into more rural part of this state, I mean, there has to be, in order to provide those pathways for kids, there has to be that collaboration, right? And that flexibility, because you may not be able to offer those programs in your community, but in the neighboring one, they may. And so there's been a tradition, I think, in Maine, and certainly with like superintendent's agreements and other things where, you're putting the best interest of the child at the locus of everything, right? And being able to build those pathways and flexibility when you may not have the resources to have or even the population or density to have enough of the, diversity of resources. So you kind of have to do that. That's just part of, I think, educating kids effectively in a state like Maine. So, yeah, I mean, and the having mandated, this is how this needs to work to have any kind of this inter-district collaboration. I don't think works or would work.
So do you think this resolution is it necessary?
I think it is. And
Oh, you think it
just
is,
in
pardon.
support of that.
Gotcha.
I
Right.
feel like from what Jeff was just saying, this needs to be clarified
Yes,
better.
yes.
Because
yes.
my perception when I read this the other day was similar but different. Like I was thinking more from the vocational standpoint of what
Mhm.
Diane had just kind of mentioned quickly, because, I know I've seen different districts where, let's say there's a business program that's offered in Scarborough, but it's not offered in South Portland. Can a kid cross over district lines and come here because their parents are adamant that that kid take that business program that's here? Or, maybe there's not something that's at Paths and, over in Westbrook, but maybe they do offer it down in Biddeford. Can a kid go down that way? So this is kind of I didn't think of it the way that Jeff had just explained it,
Yeah.
but it makes a lot more sense. I just don't think this explains it.
I don't
well.
think so. When I started reading this, honestly, my first thought was, oh, it's kind of like how we share positions with other districts. That's where I first started. And then I had to completely change my mindset to that's not at all what this is talking about. So I think this has to be cleaned up in a way that really gets to what they're trying to say. I don't think this does it. Maybe you could just write down everything, or maybe go back to the recording and just,
bring your recording.
yeah, just play it back.
Well, students shouldn't have to leave their community, right? Like, that's what it comes down to, is you shouldn't have to leave your community for a program that is of high interest or necessity for you, right? Like, we should figure out how to work together.
So just stepping back to that, so, I'm thinking, I grew up in Northern Maine. We didn't have half of what we have down here. So like you were talking to earlier, but to what you just said, how could that be accomplished without leaving my community? Like, how do I get access? How would I, as a 15-year-old sophomore, have gotten access to stuff? So I guess I'm questioning the collaboration, but
Well, yeah, I mean, you would have to, if there were no kind of ability for me as a superintendent to work with another superintendent, or one district to work with another district to provide those crossover opportunities without literally having you move to the town that had that program.
Yeah.
Right, then you're able to be flexible and provide pathways without having to like displace a family.
And technology affords that
Or,
opportunity,
and
right?
exactly,
But
and
Also like
take
what we
advantage
do
of
with
it.
the sports, how we combined with Gorham to make a team because both of us didn't have enough.
Yeah,
So we,
it's a good.
Yeah.
so we just work together. So instead of having nothing, we both have one.
it's a perfect example, John.
so like if I grew up in Limestone, I could have attended a program in Presque Isle, just that one program, instead of having to move. Is
Right.
that what this is trying to get at?
Well,
Where it's
so
I'm
it's
sorry,
supportive
I'm
of those.
No,
flex-
don't apologize. This is,
Yeah, no, no,
I'm
it's-
on the same
it's
boat
not
as you.
clear.
It's just not
Basically,
clear at all.
Right, it's a resolution or a statement saying that we support having having the flexibility for local districts
yeah.
to meet the needs of kids and offer multiple pathways that would require kind of that inter-district collaboration.
So to Carolyn's question, if she was a student, if she lived in Limestone and her high school didn't offer, I don't know, the business class,
Yeah.
but the high school at the next town did, she could take that one class at that high school potentially, because they would collaborate together
They might, yeah.
in theory. No, I don't know what you do with all of this that we've just said.
Hold on, I'm
Fix
just
it,
gonna
Emma.
say this makes no sense.
Yeah, how about we
Stop-
just-
I'm gonna stop talking.
It needs to be clear, right?
Yeah.
It needs to
Yeah.
be made
Figure
more.
it out.
Yes, right, we're not, this,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
I'd also add, it just sounds a little cringeworthy when it says they're applauding the efforts of our school boards. Like, yes, thank you, but
Like we're patting ourselves on the back.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I would want to encourage the support. We can just get straight to the point there.
And I don't know, I don't think this comes up later. I think I did the wrong thing. I read the really long document.
No,
instead of the
that's-
short one. Yay me. It was a fun night. But But to what somebody was saying earlier about, vouchers and school choice, and I noticed in here, there's quite a bit of language between 2A, 4P, 2B, 5E, and 3B, 3B about, opposing school choice and charter schools and the voucher system and all that. And I personally am supportive of it. I feel like, we have to, what's best for the kids is, help the kids meet wherever their needs can be met best. And if it's at a different location, because maybe somebody's kid excels in math and there's a really awesome school that has some kind of math program. I was disappointed to see that that's discouraged. I get it because of money flowing from here to there and everywhere. But that, from my personal point of view, I'm a fan of that. So throw
Which-
that out
Can you
there.
tell me which one you're reading again?
So it was just, somebody commented on that earlier with regards to what we were just talking about, 2B, 5D. But I noticed it in 2A, 4P, 2B, 5E, and 3B, 3B. So it was kind of scattered throughout the document, but again, that's my personal opinion. I understand why MSMA may not agree with me. But I just feel like, it's children first. If that's what we're doing, and as educators, we should support children where they can learn the best. And it's, another school might provide a better structure or a different structure that meets their needs. I guess that's my only point.
And really, that's, I mean, not the only basis for, it, but one of the
Yeah.
basis for the superintendent waiver, right? Like if it's not
Yeah.
working here or in another school, right? That's the purpose of that, exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had noticed it was spelled out in here in several places. And so I was just, oh, that's unfortunate. But I know it's a bigger topic than here.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's evident, at least from here, to me, that needs. Mhm, mhm. And maybe clarification too with how their other, maybe a deeper look, would you mind providing the ones that you found to Freyla, like off of,
Oh, yeah, sure.
offline, so that you could say that, because maybe, I think what I'm hearing you say is that this resolution might disagree with some of the others that they're
Yeah.
not looking at right
Yeah.
now,
Maybe.
potentially.
That would be.
Hmm,
That's what that happens with long
Yeah.
documents.
yeah.
It is long. I read it all.
All right, any other discussion on that one? All right, so then we have these are the new proposed resolutions. So the first one is nonpartisan school board members. The Maine School Board Association recognizes and supports the nonpartisan practice of the election of local school board members as determined by the school district structure statute in 1 MRSA Title 20A. School board members are elected on a general ballot without party designation, and once elected are to focus on what's in the best interest of the students and the school district. The rationale behind this new resolution is this resolution underscores our obligation as school board members to make decisions based on what is best for the students we serve and make decisions through that lens, regardless of an individual's party affiliation. So is there any discussion here?
Right, I'll dive in.
Mhm.
I see both sides. I truly, truly, truly do. But at the end of the day, I think as a voter, it's helpful for me to know party affiliation, because then I might know, okay, I get a general sense of how this person will think and what lens they will make decisions through. Because I'll pick on you, Brian. Brian may make a totally different call on something than I, and I might make a totally different call than Brian on something. And I understand children, and we can both have children at the heart of of our decisions and how we make them. So that's just my opinion. I think it's a really worthy goal that if politics could be out of everything. I really do. But at the end of the day, I think, in my opinion, it helps inform people who may not take the time to know, whoever is running. So that's my spiel.
So I personally like the wording of this as a person who is not affiliated with any party. I like that because you can be a part of any party, but still have different views from that party. And then once everyone is elected and we're all on the same board, it really doesn't matter what party you're on. We are all one board. So it shouldn't, in my opinion, it shouldn't matter. I think I like the language there for that.
And also, going with what you're saying is you could be of whichever party or whatever you want to be. And then being associated with that could hurt you, even though you don't necessarily would make any decision based on looking through that lens. As you said, you may not see things for the school. You could put people are able to be objective, and you know what? I think it could, and if you were somebody that was right for the position, but because you're associated with a certain party, it may hurt you. So why not keep it out? You can tell people your beliefs all day long without saying, I'm a, Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm a, Green Party, whatever. You can be anything you want and not, I think keeping it out of it will, in the end, help you more than it hurts you.
It's funny, that was my other side.
Yeah.
Right, because that's the exact same thought I had. I'm like, yeah, it can hurt you too, which, at the end of the day, it's up to the voters to decide. But yeah, I absolutely agree with you, John.
I also support this because I think that we need to be depoliticizing things more than politicizing things more. People running to their corners is not a way that we can run a school. And I would hope that people aren't making decisions for the whole district based on their political views, but based on what the evidence is and the best decision for those kids. So I fully support this.
Yeah, I had an interesting initial reaction to this because I ran during a presidential election year. And that is when this becomes an issue, because it didn't match when I was running for some in our community. It didn't matter what my stance was, what my views were. It mattered what political party I was affiliated with. And so there were people that would literally tell me, I appreciate what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying, but I'm not going to vote for you because you're this. And that is a very difficult place to find yourself in, because again, if you're trying to do something and you're trying to volunteer for something because you believe passionately in helping the students and making sure that our district is well run, and you want to give your time and serve, that piece shouldn't matter, right? But what I was finding from my experiences, it did matter. It did matter very much. And my other qualifications or what I could bring to the table didn't matter. So I had this, like, I was like, yes, I love this. I love this for that reason, right? Because then we can really say, like, this is what we're advocating for. This is not important in this role, right? Yeah.
No, sorry, I hate the microphone. No, I completely get it. Like I said, when I started, I can definitely see both sides. I'm just thinking as a voter, it's helpful to know the lens of which somebody has their worldview. So that's my only perception. I'm not saying at all, and I know that you didn't mean anything, that politics should be a part of school.
No, I know.
Yeah, but so I just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
No.
But yeah, that's not what I'm advocating for. I'm just thinking helpful to the voter.
Yeah. Good. All right. If there's no other discussion, I'll go on to the next one. This one is parent guardian engagement in the education of their children. The Maine School Board Association believes parents and guardians are pivotal partners in the education of their children. MSBA supports the opportunities for parents and guardians to be involved in their children's education as described and designated within federal and state laws and school district policies, handbooks, procedures, and other guidance related to parental involvement and engagement. These times for engagement include the opportunity to be heard by school district leadership, opportunities for consultations with teaching staff about what is being taught, and the opportunity to receive and review information about school budgets and spending. Parents and guardians also have the ability to opt their children out of programming they do not feel is appropriate for their child. These opportunities for involvement should be communicated clearly and consistently throughout documentation in school district policies, school websites, handbooks, and other forms of communication, which are publicly available and easily accessible. Times to raise questions of school personnel about these engagement opportunities should be offered to all parents and guardians. MSBA also believes that parent-guardian opportunities for involvement in the education of their own children should not inhibit the education of other children. The rationale behind this: the public education of students is most effective when parents are actively engaged. Opportunities for that engagement should be communicated to parents with appropriate parameters that accommodate school schedules and parent schedules. That communication can and should include public forums on topics of great interest, as well as one-on-one conversations when needed. So is there any discussion on this?
I think it's great to give parents that ability. I mean, we have it anyway, but yeah, I think it's great to formalize that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we talk about this in our goals, so, you know, I think this could be a good example of what we talked about before. Not necessarily that we're ahead of the curve, but there are things that they might be mentioning that we're doing already and that we definitely know we value and find important.
Yeah. Yeah, I had the same thought, like the we've policies we've looked at this year, we've really talked about, especially like think of the transgender and gender expansive student policy, we really talked about parents being involved and being active participants in their kids' education. So to me, this kind of dovetailed right into what we've said as a board and has said is important to us. All right, we feel good there. It was a long one, so it took a couple slides, sorry. Yeah, it just keeps going. This one also has 2 slides. Okay. So the last one is the state funding to support students' mental and behavioral health. The Maine School Boards Association believes that additional funding needs to be allocated to school districts to support students' mental and behavioral health. The legislator needs to dedicate additional funding that can be distributed to all districts, including minimum receivers, through targeted funds with the EPS within the EPS formula to support students. Action at the state level to help address wait lists, barriers to access, and the shortage of staff equipped to help address the needs is essential, as is support for the provision of resources besides personnel, including best practices and other specialized trainings. The rationale is that schools saw concerns with students' mental and behavioral health made worse during the shutdown of schools due to COVID, and they still persist today. We need to address this mental and behavioral health concern, which affects how students feel about themselves and how they relate to others. We need to seek ways to provide greater resources to support students with these needs. Is there any discussion?
Well, this seems
yes.
to, oh, go ahead, John.
It's another one of those where we're focusing on the mental and behavioral health of things. I would like to add nutritional needs, because the economy's been kind of rough lately and maybe this is addressed where they say barriers to access. But making sure that our kids have access to food at all times. And I know it's also funded by federally funded now, but is there any additional state funding that we can provide for those families if needed? I don't know if that's the place for it, so.
No, I think you probably could put something in there because we would want them to advocate to continue the free lunch
Mhm.
services, exactly for that reason.
Yeah.
And breakfast, free breakfast and lunch.
And just as a point of information, they actually are expanding that for 3 more years.
Mhm. Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah.
Is it in there somewhere else?
Say that again?
It could be written somewhere else.
I was gonna say, I swear.
There's one that I should look into it, but 21, 3B, 2B. I don't have the
21,
long document
3B.
in front of me. I just
Oh,
have the
yeah,
short
funding,
document.
yeah.
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 Yeah, it's actually in there. It's 3B,
Yeah.
2B, which calls on the Maine School Board Association, calls upon Congress to pass the Universal School Meals Program Act of 2021, which was then the School Nutrition Act of 1966, and the Universal B National School Lunch Act to make breakfast and lunch free for all children without adversely affecting federal funding formula that may use free and reduced lunch rates. That was adopted in 2022, so I think they've adopted that. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't want to restate all that, but yeah, it's 3B, 2B, it's in there, 2022, they did it. I
Scratch
think-
what I said.
But no, I think it was a good point, but I think this is really important. And I think there's a couple of factors. And the first is this is really about legislative advocacy towards budgeting to work towards getting more support for kids at that level. And I think it's part of a larger conversation that's outside of schools that has to do with when you have students, children who are not doing well, and when they're not doing well in the educational system, I get to see them in my day-to-day life in a different system. And there is a long-standing severe shortage of resources for families who are struggling with their children's needs in their homes. I don't mean special needs children, although their struggles are there as well. I mean, when children are not functioning well in society because they have untreated mental health needs, and they don't have access to medication, and all the therapy services are 6-month wait lists for online telehealth appointments once a week with counselors who are not well trained and experienced with dealing with children who have trauma and other related disorders. Schools see that, and then we see that, and I don't want to hijack the conversation to close Long Creek, which is a very robust conversation outside of this room. But the reality is there are very few safe placements for children who are struggling in the community and can't safely be at home. And there's a shortage of mental health beds, and then there's an even larger shortage of long-term residential facilities in the state of Maine. And I think we all should be advocating that our children have what they need, because when those children aren't doing well, they end up on an obvious, mostly chronically homeless, bounced around, often incarcerated, whether as youth or as adults. And then they struggle for life. And if if we have appropriate funding that starts at the schools, if we can meet these children when they're 5, 6, and 7, I won't be advocating to put them in custody when they're 15, 16, 17, and then putting them in prison when they're 18, 19, and 20. And that would really, that it's a systemic thing. It's not the school can't fix this problem. The criminal justice system can't fix this problem, but the legislature can fund adequate services to address some of the issues. And unless all our systems are working together, it's just going to continue to cycle. And it's in a really dire right now. We have no long-term placement for children with psychiatric needs in the state. We ship them to other states. We pay hundreds of thousands of dollars per student, per child, to ship them out of state if we can't deal with their mental health needs, because we have no long-term psychiatric beds here. I'll packing my soapbox up, but I'm bringing it with me.
Well, yeah, speaking of trauma, right? Sending them away from their families. Yeah, I mean, on the surface, I support this. I don't know if it could be written a little bit better to, I think that is a good statement of support. Maybe even a call for action or funding a little bit, I don't know. That's what I read when I read it. how are we doing this and how is
And
that
wouldn't-
going to be impacted?
And don't we fall under the minimum receivers category?
Not yet, but I think that
Okay.
John, I think the financial model shows us getting there fairly soon. If I'm not speaking out of turn, I think I think he expects us to be close. But we certainly don't receive as much as other parts of the state, right? I think that's a fair assessment to make. So I do appreciate that that this advocacy work is inclusive. Yes, yes.
And this is the year that we have a bumper crop of students entering with special support services. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying all of them have
Mhm.
mental health or all of them have behavioral challenges, but if we have twice as many as normal children entering with CDS services, where that translates directly to increased need for mental health and behavioral supports.
Mhm.
It's a sad topic. That's all.
Carolyn, did you have a comment on this earlier? Okay, I just want to make sure we don't. Yeah. All right. So that is the last one. Do you feel, is there anything else we can give to you before you pack your soapbox up and represent us so well?
Yeah, no, I think I'm good. I think again, most of them weren't that earth shattering, or I didn't have a lot of questions. I didn't know what that one meant, so I think I can advocate for clarification
Yeah,
on that. And then we know what I'm gonna do on the last one, so.
perfect. All right, thank you so much.
Is there any advocacy that we can push for with regards to, we were in the curriculum meeting the other day and was it just last night?
Yeah, last night, yeah, yesterday. Yeah.
Seems so long ago. But we've talked about it time and time again here about, is it the MEAs and the lack of consistency of testing and getting score results? Is there anything that the MSMA, should I get my acronym right? MSBA
Yeah.
can do to advocate and advocate for that, so we can get.
There is one on there, 4.12 is standardized testing benchmarks, and they talk about that. If there's an area where we can push on that, I think that is really important. I think that we've heard that over and over and over
Yeah.
again, how important that is. So I'll bring and see where I can insert it, if I can insert it.
Say, do that one.
Do that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not very shy, so I can.
That's a good one. Thank you, Carolyn. That's a great. idea.
You're welcome. Once in a while.
All right. Agenda item 8.0 are committee reports. So we'll start with the communications meeting, committee. So Jillian.
All right, so we've had two meetings. We had one on 7/20 and one on 8/3. We're trying to meet more frequently in shorter bursts. We have one tentatively scheduled for 9/14. I should say there's a possible other meeting in between now and then. We are mainly working on getting the Spotlight Awards up and running again, a welcome letter out, and we have been discussing another roundtable date. Obviously, there's a lot of opportunity to engage, particularly with the school project. We were kind of bouncing around with the idea of whether that is, too much or not enough for just regular school things. So any input is welcome. We will likely do another one for sure in the early fall, once school has gotten started up again. But that's it.
Is the welcome letter goes out to the whole district? Is that for, or what is that?
All right, it's just our, from the board, welcoming staff back and reminding them of the Spotlight Award mostly. an
Okay, I wasn't
opportunity.
sure if it
No,
was
no,
the
it's-
community or just the stat, all right? Okay.
Oh, gosh, yeah, that would be a different one.
Could that, I don't know if that could be another opportunity, but we've talked about this in building committee a little bit about trying to continue to educate our own teachers about the push for the new school. I don't know if that's an opportunity, but as we enter, you know, a lot of these new orientations and
Yeah.
the groups, I know you have a keynote speaker and things like that, but any of those, I'm just thinking
Yeah.
from a communications perspective to continue to hopefully, fingers crossed, things works out, you know, from a land perspective.
Mhm.
But if it does, then I mean, our top cheerleaders are the ones doing the work on the ground.
Yeah, there's a little bit of overlap because we have our regular board communications committee. And then additionally, there's a building steering committee, communications committee. So there's like this strange overlap between the two, right? And so the building steering committee communications subcommittee, which is a huge mouthful. That
needs an
is-
acronym.
Yeah, we need an acronym for that, but they are actually we're discussing that with Jeff, ways to make sure that, and our teachers are pretty engaged and have attended. We've had building leadership attend town council meetings pretty regularly recently, which has been wonderful. Teachers have also attended and come and given public comment about what this means to them. And it's been really, really awesome to see the support from our staff. But yeah, that was one of the things we just recently talked about too.
Right, and we talked about just including and I'll kind of mirroring the themed community, like weekly community forums. Kind of mirroring that in our district communication to staff and to families. And also it's definitely going to be, and we talked about this a little bit too at the leadership retreat, particularly this fall, really focusing on educating staff to help educate communities about the project as well, and having that integrated into, you know, different places during opening day and then even into you know, open houses and those kind of things too. So.
And in our last conversation for communications, we were talking about potentially partnering with the PTA on events and touching base with Laura to make sure that we're not doing double the work here and making sure that we're all doing it all the right time.
Yeah, they're Laura, the communications subcommittee for the building, I'll word it that way, is having 8 weeks of themed Q&A sessions. So once a week, starting August 22nd. And they will be live and via Zoom, so people can attend either way. So it's very kind of similar to what the communications committee has been doing with the roundtable, very similar idea. They will just be topic specific to the school, to the unified school, and issues that we know are of great concern in the community. So like week 1 is the tax impact, so that the entire time will be spent talking about the tax impact. And every week is something different, and it goes down into the end. When we get to the end of the 8 weeks, we're going to do building tours associated with the Q&As combined. So we've seen some really, I would say, from our previous tours, I know that some of us have participated in them. There's been, I think they've been really eye-opening for people in the community to really get an idea of what we're working, the limitations we're working with. So those will start up August 22nd. They are all on Tuesdays, except there's a couple of off days. I shouldn't say they're all on Tuesdays. They're all 6, most of them are 6 to 7 p.m. There are some Sunday dates in there as well. All right, curriculum committee.
So we met yesterday or last week, as Carolyn said. So
It's been a long.
yeah. So we met yesterday. It was the first time we had Katie Vetro on board, spearheading her first meeting, which was great. It was a pretty quick meeting. Diane joined us as well, which was fantastic. So basically, we got a little bit of a review similar to what Jeff had said before in his superintendent's report, that the summer program was a huge success. Everything has ended at this point except for Kinder Camp, which ends tomorrow. And I just gave a nice shout out, but I'll do it here publicly as well, that I've heard from my daughter who is in Kinder Camp. Just today's her 3rd day, and she comes home glowing and like ready to tell us about what her day, like literally, I feel like she's totally ready. and I don't know who this little girl is. So, but she knows her teachers, she loves them, and she, she's talking very positively, which I think is it just shows the power of these programs that we do. And I had mentioned it in our meeting yesterday as well, that I have another friend who has 2 older daughters in the district who participated in the Reading Academy. And this is the 2nd year that they wanted to do it, right? You hear reading and you hear kids and you're like, do they want to read? And right. And usually they're like, no. But there were pictures that Katie shared with us that I meant to put on the slide, but I didn't. But some of the activities that they were doing, and it looks like a lot of fun. So it's no surprise to me why our kids are so excited to be a part of our schools and in our district. And, I'll continue through curriculum as we get some of that information, or if you guys hear anecdotes like that. I think it's great. And this is a good place to kind of share it, just to know that, curriculum, I think some people think about it and they're like, oh, lesson plans, like it's boring. But there's a lot of fun that goes into those lesson plans. And, I'm hearing about it all from my daughter at the moment. So I think it's good.
Is she taking the bus there too?
Oh, she loves the bus. She tells me that is her favorite part.
Yeah.
So
That's their
she has her new swipe card. She knows about it. She knows what she needs it for. So yeah, lots of positives. She hasn't lost it yet. Yeah, right.
Better than what I can say for my kids.
Yeah. So there seems to be a lot of general excitement, and I think that's, it's great. I hear it, and I just wanted to speak to that specifically just because I'm in that particular part. But again, the reading program had really good feedback that I've heard from the community as well. So really nice. The Title I grant, I had mentioned this during our last meeting, but we officially discussed it during our curriculum committee meeting, is that due to some changes in allocations and carryover of funds, we are able to fund through the Title I grant an additional position in the district, which will be at 8 Corners. It'll be very similar to the literacy intervention services that are currently offered at Blue Point. So this is one of those positions that we've talked about. If we can get this school passed, right now, this is very specific to the areas in town that show a need based on where our our free and reduced, right, where those applications are submitted from. So, right now, currently our students in Pleasant Hill are kind of missing out on this potential person, but when we collaborate together, there's many benefits. So this is just, it's a positive for the district, but it still shows that we have places to grow, and hopefully collaborating as our school could be big. Up there, a lot of you have expressed interest, especially because of the school, about kindergarten enrollment numbers. So we had discussed this with Diane as to where things had actually fallen recently. And so this seems right on par with what our expectations are. You can see the breakdown between the 3 different schools there. They're very close to each other, but they're expected to grow as well. And Diane had shared with us that typically it seems like this number should be somewhere around 205 to 215. So it seems like it should get around there.
Yeah, one of the things that I shared yesterday was our administrative assistants just came back on Monday, and then we had them engaged in 2 days of professional development. And so they're literally just yesterday hitting the ground running with all of the new applications for student enrollment. So these are definitely soft numbers at this point.
So, and I did ask both Diane and Katie that as they get more updated, kind of when the dust settles, to let us know what those numbers are. Because again, this will be a good indicator of the direction we're going. And I think we all kind of know where that's going, but a solid number would be helpful. Upcoming, if you feel like you want to join our next meeting, we are going to skip our September meeting just due to the busyness during that time, and Katie also being new to the district. We kind of discussed it and said we'd give her that month to kind of get situated. So we're going to be meeting again on the 11th in October, 6 p.m. on Zoom. And our expectation right now is to discuss that external curriculum guide that had been shared with you towards the end of last school year. And we're expecting some updates there as teachers roll out, what they're going to be doing for the year. And then Katie had mentioned that she has some initial data from the spring, but she's waiting to get some other information before she can really share that. So hopefully we'll have some curriculum data to share soon.
Are there any questions for Brian? All right, policy committee.
Policy committees continue to churn out things to vote on. Don't worry, we're coming up on that later. Our last meeting was August 2nd. We had robust public comment from a community member on policy GBEBB, which you will not see tonight because we didn't get to it in policy. That's going to be a pretty a bigger discussion. That's a bigger policy having to do with students and staff. We completed our school safety discussion. I think we're in a really good spot with that. And we reviewed activity fees, which is for first reading tonight. I will leave that for later. We reviewed the policies for second reading as well. Our next meeting is on September 11th at 4 o'clock. We meet in the conference room upstairs. We also have a Zoom link available. We're going to be diving into GBEBB. I left a B off at the end of that. No, I didn't. It replaces current GBEB. Staff conduct with students. And I think this is going to be a pretty meaty policy. It's got a lot of details in it about how staff and students interact with each other. And we had a lot of feedback about that. So I think it'll be an interesting discussion. We also are still looking at facilities naming, which hopefully will become super relevant very shortly. It's going to require cooperation with town council, which we're working on. And then we're going to start hitting, I kind of arbitrarily picked 2020 as the date. We're going to start going through all the policies pre-2020 that haven't been looked at, and we're just going to review them. My hope is that most of them will just be able to put a date on the bottom as we re-reviewed it. And there won't be a lot of changes, but some of the policies haven't been reviewed since 2003. And they bear looking at, I think. So that's sort of how we've chosen to take it. If there's anything that any of you policies that come up that you have questions about, or that you think we should take a look at more urgently for some reason, just please forward that to me and we can definitely expedite that. Otherwise, we'll just keep plowing through the policies until we have no pre-2020 ones, and then we can start at the 2021 ones. So that's the policy committee.
Are there any questions for Freyla? Any comments? All right, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Well, I rolled out of our last meeting into this meeting so with Jillian. Yeah, we had a meeting tonight at 6 o'clock. We have our next meeting is on September 12th. We need new chairs. So I think an email went out to let you all know that both of our chairs resigned. And that is unfortunate because I want to say that both of them did a very good job for the last year. I think they shouldered a lot of work without a lot of guidance or support. We didn't tell them what we needed to do. They sort of built the plane while flying, although I think that's been overused recently, but they sort of figured it out. But they both elected to step down. And so the meeting today, really, we kind of scrapped our agenda because everyone got sick. There was no facilitator. So 8 minutes in, I decided to become the facilitator of the meeting. So we did. And what we focused on is we looked at what we did to nominate the chairs a year ago, really last summer. And we're going to try to redo that with this board's approval. The other thing is, I think we're working on an organizational document as a board so that we can hand them some basic structure instructions so that they don't have to do that, because that's not really where their work should be focused on. And so that's basic, like, how do you have a quorum? What is a vote? How do you replace your chairs? Because right now we literally are en masse talking about how we're going to replace the chairs, and really we should just be doing that. Like, so we have people here, this is how we're going to vote, this is who we're nominating, let's go, instead of we spent 45 minutes talking about how everyone feels about how we're going to do that. So exciting though, we still had, even though it was an impromptu last minute rescheduled meeting, we had, I think, 12 attendees by the end of it. And people are still really invested and excited. So that's going to keep on keeping on. And I think with a little support from this board, which I think we're working on, which we'll bring to the full board when it's ready, we can, I think, assist them by just giving them some support so that they can move on to the work that we want them to do.
Really, I was just noticing the plural, so chairs. Is that, does that work well?
It, yes.
Okay.
For this committee, it really does. It's a very collaborative committee, which is helping me grow as a person individually. Watch and participate in. But there's 3 chairs. There's a student chair, there's a community chair, and there's a staff chair. And
Okay.
one of the things we talked about is how do we facilitate them organizing themselves so they can organize us? And how that, from an outsider's perspective, because we weren't part of the chair meetings, things that we saw that might not have worked as well and things that we could help them work with better. So that's part of that. But we explicitly talked about that, like, is that, but I don't think the committee would work with 1 chair. I think you'd have a riot. So.
Yeah,
So,
I'm
yes.
just thinking back to prior experience where I've worked under 3-headed. It, in my experience, it's a difficult task. So just want to make sure they're set up for success.
I think we can do it. I think they need multiple chairs. It's a very collaborative group, like more collaborative than I've ever been involved with. Which is, again, I'm growing as a person. It's good.
Well, I think just to also jump in there, we talked about having there be really specific tasks associated with each chair. They would be meeting together, but this, whatever chair A, B, and C, like whatever community chair would do this. Whatever.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any liaison updates or any other committee updates? So we haven't. I did notice yesterday at I talked with John, I noticed at the council meeting yesterday, sorry, Tom and his manager's report talked about the community center ad hoc committee. That is going to get off the ground shortly, so. Hopefully so. Yeah. Yeah. It might have slipped their minds, yes. All right, agenda item 9.0 is new business. 9.1 is the second reading of policy JIC, Student Code of Conduct.
I'm happy to take it from here. I do have one question about this. I have it with me, but I didn't realize we were going to be talking about that because this was when we had a request from the union to do a meet and consult on, which we then tried to set up and we didn't hear back from them. So we have previously reviewed this policy. We made virtually no changes. We changed some wills to shalls. And I think 2 places, but we made virtually no other changes on it. I just want to make sure people understand that I expect that they're still going to want to meet and consult on this policy and it may come around more quickly. Is that fair, Shannon? I don't know if you've spoken with the rep to see if she was planning to set this up because she was really insistent, but then she didn't really communicate with us for an extended period of time.
Right, and where we left off, I have not heard anything further
Okay.
about it.
So we thought it was important that this get on the books, so to speak,
Mhm.
before the start of the school year. And if there are concerns about the policy, she's welcome to raise them at any time and we can then review the policy with her. And if there are changes that we agree should be made, we'll bring them back to this for first and second reading, like we would any other policy, if that makes sense.
All right, is there any discussion or any questions, excuse me? All right, do I have a motion to approve the second reading of policy JIC, Student Code of Conduct?
So
So
moved.
move. Oops, second.
Is there somebody to second it for me?
He did.
Oh, you did, thank you. Are there any discussion?
Yes, sorry about that. I was looking at the wrong policy. I'm on hold for meeting consult is the right one. There was a couple other changes. We made the school unit changes. We shortened some of the language. I should have said this right again. I mixed it up. And then the one is we updated the one of the definitions for discrimination harassment to match our new discrimination harassment policy. So I don't think there are substantive changes to this policy. But to be honest, it was more than the shells. So just so you guys know that. You have seen this before, once before.
Thank you. All right, any further discussions? All right, all in favor? Perfect, it's unanimous, thank you. Agenda item 9.2 is the second reading of policy JKF, disciplinary removal of students with disabilities.
This is the one where I threatened to get out my orange book, which I do love the color of, but you don't want me to read from. It's, this is, exactly what it sounds like. It's removal of students with disabilities. It has a lot of intersection with federal law, and we made virtually no changes except for we changed the pronouns to there so that we didn't keep having to say he and she. There was one small section that we rewrote very slightly to clarify the language. That was subsection 6B. We have made no changes since the first reading that you've seen, and virtually all of this is enshrined in statute. So it's not, there's not a lot of room for discussion.
All right, do I have a motion to, first, is there any questions? All right, do I have a motion to approve the second reading of policy JKF, disciplinary removal of students with disabilities?
So moved.
Here's what I found.
Second.
Sorry, must have hit my watch button. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor? It's unanimous, thank you. Agenda item 9.3 is the second reading of policy JKFR, which is a disciplinary removal of students with disabilities administrative procedure.
This is exactly what I said in the last one, which is we changed pronouns around to straighten out the language. But again, this is statutory. There's very little room for discretion. And other than that, it's mostly in code and what's given to us as guidelines language. It's required, so. And governed by federal law.
Are there any questions? All right, do I have a motion to approve the second reading of policy JKFR, disciplinary removal of students with disabilities administrative procedure?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Perfect, thank you, it's unanimous. Agenda item 9.4 is the second reading of policy CBIP, the evaluation of the superintendent procedure.
This is the policy that we decided to change the timeline on to make it a little less hectic in May and June. So the change substantively is that we will set goals and objectives for the next fiscal year no later than the last day in September. And then we'll do the evaluation no later than the last day of May, which means we'll really be meeting in April instead of meeting in May and June, which is what we did this year. This came out of our discussion. So it is exactly how it looked last time, and we didn't discuss it further at our meeting.
All right, are there any questions? All right, is there a motion to approve the second reading of policy CBIP, evaluation of the superintendent procedure?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous, thank you. Agenda item 9.5 is the first reading of policy JJF, student fees.
So this policy came out of a discussion about equity and making sure that we didn't have barriers to participation for students, athletes and students in activities, which we have a fee for at Wentworth, the middle school and the high school. We have to look at this every year by our own policy. So we did it for that reason too. I'll get to the exact fees. We elected after a long discussion, I think over 2 or 3 meetings, to leave it the same. And the basis of that is we had information from Kate Bolton about the fiscal impact of making changes, and we had input from the athletic director about the rate of participation, and the rate of participation for students in Scarborough in athletics and activities approaches 90%, which is extremely high, higher than average for sure. And as a result of that, we decided without information that there was actually a barrier to participation. It didn't make sense to do something that would quite honestly reduce the amount of money we're bringing in to contribute to our district with information that we have extremely high participation. And so we made a suggestion that when there's a survey opportunity, that the athletic director include a question that would sort of probe at, are there students who are not partaking in activities or athletics because of these fees. We also have a waiver program that is available. It's a click box. There's not, it's not like a robust or difficult process to request the waiver, and they're pretty much granted if it's requested. So I think we have the ability to serve students, allow them to participate as they wish, and that's borne out by the numbers of people who participate.
Is there any questions? Are there any questions? Excuse me. All right, do I have a motion to approve the first reading of policy JJF student fees?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Perfect, it's unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 9.6 is the first reading of policy JJFE student fees exhibit.
So this is the schedule of fees. Currently at the high school, it's $150 per sport. It's $50 per activity. The middle school, it's $100 per, I'm sorry, no. I lied. That's what we potentially were thinking about.
Yeah.
It's at the high school, it's $100 per sport. It's $50 per activity. Yeah. And there's a cap of $300 for the year. For middle school, there's an athletic cap of $75 per sport, $25 per activity, and there's a $225 student cap if you participate in both. At Wentworth, it's $25 per activity. Those fees, from my understanding, have not changed in 10-ish years. So they've remained static. We did consider if we were gonna, we thought about reducing it to one fee for the year, but upping the fee. So that we were playing around with numbers about that. That's where the numbers I was reading at first. But ultimately, when we decided not to make any changes, we decided to leave it what it was.
Are there any questions? All right, do I have a motion to approve the first reading of policy JJFE student fees exhibit?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor? Perfect, it's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to bundle, thank you, Kayla. I'm going to bundle 9.7, 9.8, and 9.9, which are the meeting minutes of July 15th, 2023, the workshop minutes of June 15th, 2023, the workshop minutes of July 13th, 2023, and the meeting minutes of July 13th, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Perfect, thank you. Agenda item 9.10 are appointments. 9.10.1 is the Blue Point K2 special education teacher.
So Maria Lowe has been selected to fill this position. Ms. Lowe received her Bachelor's of Science in Elementary Education with a concentration in special education and minored in child development and family relations at University of Maine at Orono.
Do I have a motion to approve the Blue Point K2 special education teacher?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any questions? Any discussion? Yeah.
I have a question, and I don't want to get ahead of myself. I know we've had several grievances filed that might be related to one or more of these. I haven't connected them and I haven't read them all because they came in relatively recently. If something happens with the grievance procedure, what would happen to these folks in terms of their positions? And I don't need to open a can of worms. I'm just curious.
Well, I think the best way to answer that is, we need to proceed with filling. There's one position here that would kind of could potentially be impacted. But we need to proceed and fill the position and educate our kids. And,
Yeah, I was just curious because I thought there might be some crossover, but again, I haven't read everything that came in the last hour because I was in the other meeting.
And is there any other discussion? All right, all in favor? Perfect, it's unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 9.10.2 is the middle school 0.7 PE health teacher.
So Nicole Sear has been selected to fill this position. Ms. Sear received her Bachelor of Science degree in Health Science at Keene State College. She has recently completed a dual certification in physical education and health education at St. Joe's. Ms. Sear is a level 1 certified mountain bike instructor.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the middle school PE 0.7 PE health teacher?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Perfect, it's unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 9.10.3 is the Eight Corners PE Wellness Teacher.
Jacob King has been selected to fill this position. Mr. King received his bachelor's degree in health science with a concentration in physical education. He recently worked in the Turner Primary School as a pre-K2 physical education teacher and as an after-school physical education program coordinator for Turner Schools.
Very good. Do I have a motion to approve the Eight Corners PE Wellness Teacher?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Perfect, thank you. It's unanimous. Agenda item 10.0 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to
So moved.
adjourn?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?